Hey church, and welcome to this week's small group. Now, this last Sunday we asked the question, what was the worst part of Jesus' suffering? And while the physical suffering was really bad, the worst part was that Jesus experienced spiritual death so that we could have eternal life. You know, I've always liked underdog stories, perhaps because I've always felt like I was the underdog. But one of the greatest underdog movies ever, in my opinion, was Rocky V. And for those of you who have seen the movie, you remember in the very beginning of the movie, they established that the Russian was a deadly boxer. He could kill you in the ring. And so Rocky trains and he trains, and of course the Russian always has the edge over Rocky's training. And then they get into the ring, and it looks like Rocky is going to be absolutely demolished. But then at some point, he kind of flips a switch and he says, "Come on, hit me, you know." And at the very end, he actually knocks the Russian out. It's one of the greatest, in my opinion, stories. You know, what's your favorite underdog story? And maybe you can ask that question in your small group. But these are the two questions that I'd like for you to start with. Why do you think people in our culture are so fascinated by come from behind or death to life stories? And what would have been the results if Easter Sunday never came and Jesus remained in the tomb? What would have come of Christianity and the Jesus movement? Personally, I think that if Easter Sunday had never happened, none of us would know about Jesus. He would have been a failed revolutionary who died unjustly, perhaps a footnote in the history books, if at all. So what I want you to do is read Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 6. And I want you to keep in mind how important the resurrection is. What do you think the two women were feeling as they approached the tomb? And the people at the tomb experienced fear. So what were some of the natural responses to having your expectations turned upside down? And how do we overcome some of the negative responses? And what circumstances helped you to come and to see the empty tomb of Jesus with eyes of faith? Sometimes I wonder if it would have been nice for the women if they would have had cell phones on the day that they discovered Jesus not there. Could you imagine? They could have snapped a picture of the empty tomb, maybe snapped a picture of the angel, and they could have sent it directly to their Instagram feeds. But other times I wonder if maybe cell phones aren't so good. Maybe my cell phone's not so good. You know, perhaps the women would have been too distracted on their cell phones to catch what was going on as they walked up to the tomb. Or perhaps they would be so busy trying to take the picture that they would miss the words of the angel. I'm so glad that they were present and that they were experiencing the moment. Do you think phones, tablets, and social media outlets do more to connect us to people and events? Or do they sometimes do more to distract us? And why? And what are some significant experiences in your life that you return to in memory and share about with others? And why have these experiences impacted you so much? So let me say this. I'm not anti-social media. See what I did there? I'm not against social media, but I have noticed that I was not managing social media well in my own life. And so I've actually cut it out of my life, and I've actually experienced a little bit of freedom. Next, I want you to read Matthew chapter 28, verses 7 through 9. Why do you think Jesus chose to appear to these women rather than appearing directly to the disciples himself? And the two Marys worshiped Jesus before they shared about him. So why is worship a necessary and integral part of our mission to share the good news of Jesus with other people? So I want you to think back over the last 2 years and ask this question: what is the best news that you have received in the last 2 years? That you graduated? That you got that big promotion? That he finally proposed to you? That the pregnancy test came back positive? Or maybe that it came back negative, whatever it was. Think for a moment what you did when you received that great news. What was the first thing you did? You probably shared it with somebody, right? Either you posted it on social media, you texted somebody, you called somebody, you shared it. As we will read, there were two versions of this story in the Bible that went out that day. There continues to be two stories of Jesus. One that says that his story is fake, and the other that says that his story is real. So read Matthew chapter 28, verses 10 through 15, and you'll actually see both of those stories. What are the easiest things in life for you to get excited about and want to share with others? What are some of the hardest? And why do you think we so instinctively desire to share our experiences with others? Finally, we come to the Great Commission. Jesus didn't want us to keep him a secret. He wanted us to make disciples of all nations. So read Matthew chapter 28, verses 16 through 20. Why is the resurrection such an important part of sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with other people? And Jesus overcame sin and death so that we could have eternal life. So what do we have to do, and what do we have to overcome in order to share the story of Jesus with others? Next, I want you to close in prayer. Ask God to restore to our hearts the excitement of the gospel once again. And remember, Jesus experienced spiritual death so that we could experience eternal life. God bless you. Have a great rest of your small group, and we'll see you on Sunday.